So thanks for coming along tonight on this warm Sydney evening to hear our discussion on anti-Semitism in Australia after the Bondi massacre. And we've got two speakers tonight. Arsen Ostrovsky, who's a human rights lawyer and head of AIJAC Sydney office, AIJAC being the Australia, Israel and Jewish Affairs Council, and a recent appointment to that office. And Gemma Tognini, social and political commentator, a columnist with The Australian, appears regularly on Sky News, and also the founder of GT Communications. So we leave off with Arsen, we go to Gemma, and then on to questions and discussion. Arsen, you're very welcome.
All right. This one goes up. All right. Thank you, Gerard. Thank you, Anne, one of the most formidable couples that I know. It is an incredible honor to be here at the Sydney Institute. I've been here many, many times. I've walked past and you see the list of prime ministers, diplomats, security officials, world leaders, and now I get to speak here as well, and all it took was a bullet to the head. But I finally got here. I'm also incredibly happy to be here with Gemma. Fantastic. If you put a Jew and an Italian in a room, we can talk for a long time, not least over our bonding of food and our Jewish mothers, in case that's being recorded, because my mum might be watching. But as clear now, I wear multiple hats. One is with AIJAC, which I'm very proud to have commenced in this role, and the other is as a survivor of the Bondi attacks. These are 4 words, I am a survivor, that I never thought I would have to utter in my life. But yet, here I am. I grew up in Bondi. The last 13 or so years of my life, I lived in Israel, and that includes through the period of October 7th and the war with Iran. So I've seen what I thought was the worst of humanity until having to repeat it again only the other month. Before that, I actually was born in Odessa, which was still then the former Soviet Union, and moved here with my family as refuseniks. We fled, we escaped in '87 when Bob Hawke was still the Prime Minister. Has Bob Hawke spoken here, Gerard?
No, he didn't.
He didn't? Okay.
He came to some of our functions.
Okay. Look, the Australia that I grew up in, the Australia that welcomed our family as refugees, was a very different Australia than we have today. It was an oasis, it was a beacon of peace and tolerance, of humanity and compassion that welcomed us with open arms. I cannot recall in all my years of living here ever once facing an instance of anti-Semitism. And I went to the most public of high schools and went to the university in Wollongong as well. So if there's anyone here from the South. But that was seemingly an eternity away. Today, when I dropped my kids off at school, at a Jewish day school, they went through not 1, not 2, but 3 layers of security, including armed police, including Jewish communal security guards, and private armed security guards. I don't know of any other group in this country that has to go through this. It's not just our schools, it's our communal institutions, it's our aged care homes, it's our synagogues. No one in Australia lives like that except us. I was originally planning on going straight into my experience in Bondi, but it would be somewhat, I think, remiss not to perhaps talk about the elephant in the room, and that is, I think, more specifically what happened last night, and certainly the discussion we've been having endlessly in the last, not only since October 7th, obviously in the broader scheme of anti-Semitism, but in the last few days and week with the news of Israeli President Herzog's arrival to Australia. First, though, I would like to express deep gratitude to the New South Wales Police for two reasons. One, for allowing me to get here safely and freely, but also for their actions in the last 24 hours. I will talk about that some more, but I think it's important to underscore that, and there really is no other way to describe what happened, what we saw last night. This was a group of jihadist wannabes who, quite frankly, hate Israel as much as they hate Jews, and if not more so, as much as they hate Australia. We are their common enemy. You can ask if they've learned anything from Bondi when you see the former Australian of the Year standing up and calling to globalise the Intifada. What does she think globalise the Intifada is? Is it to hold our hands, sing Kumbaya and have peace? No. Globalise Intifada is what happened in Bondi. It is a 10-year-old girl murdered in cold blood. It is an 87-year-old Holocaust survivor who saw the worst of humanity in surviving the Holocaust being murdered, and 13 other precious souls being taken apart from us. What we saw, I think, yesterday was a split screen. And I think those that maybe saw the front page of The Australian, I think that was very much on point. Dignity versus disgrace. And it was a juxtaposition. On the one hand, you have President Herzog, who came to Australia for one reason, and one reason only, to show solidarity and compassion with the Jewish community here after the most heinous act of terror on Australian soil. To go to Bondi, I was there yesterday morning as well, to lay rocks, which is what we do in the Jewish faith, because rocks last, flowers don't. To lay 2 rocks he brought from Jerusalem as a sign of respect. And then what we saw outside Town Hall yesterday, even after the Supreme Court, even after the court handed down a verdict and said, no, you cannot do this. And even after New South Wales Premier Chris Minns, who I do believe deserves a great deal of respect and acknowledgement for his leadership, said, yes, you can protest, but don't do it here. Protest in Hyde Park, away from the centres of where our community is, away from the pedestrians. You can protest, but you cannot antagonize. You cannot break the law. Yes, freedom of speech is sacrosanct, but it is not an open license to defy the law, to abuse us, to harass us, to intimidate us, and to call for globalization of the Intifada. The president came here as a guest. He's not a politician. He's a head of state, no difference to the Governor General. And he came as a guest of the Governor General and the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. So the reality is those that have been calling his visit divisive, which I believe is a very fringe minority of extremists, very loud extremists, they are actually the ones that are being divisive. They are the ones that are pouring fuel on this toxic atmosphere that we find ourselves in. They are the ones, through their relentless vilification and harassment and abuse of anyone who supports even Israel's very right to exist, they are the ones that are being divisive. Not President Herzog, who has come here to embrace the Jewish community and to hopefully restart relations with Australia, which have been somewhat strained. We can talk about that. But this mob that we saw yesterday, salivating, hungry mob, represents the dark and the ugly side of what Australia has become, but not what we are or who we are. I would suggest that perhaps if these wonderful protesters really cared about human rights and peace and justice, maybe they'd be protesting Ayatollah Khamenei. 50, 60,000 people they've massacred. No, they couldn't care less. They care about 2 things. One, they care about indulging in this ravenous Jew hatred, unadulterated, unhinged. And 2, they care about confrontation and clicks. They care about hashtags. They care about Instagram. They care about getting front page stories and provocation. If they wanted to protest, they could have gone to Hyde Park, but they don't care. They couldn't care less. I wanted to talk a little bit about now Bondi. And your topic is anti-Semitism in Australia after the Bondi massacre. So yes, I was at Bondi. Yes, I got hit with a bullet to the head. It is not the easiest thing to talk about. We moved back to Australia 2.5 weeks before the attacks. I grew up in Bondi. Bondi was my beach, Bondi was my home, Bondi is my community. When we told our daughters, 4 and 8 years old, that we were moving to Australia, we were relocating to Australia, and these are girls who have seen, I don't know how many bomb shelters in their life, more than any child ever should. When we told them we're moving to Australia, my oldest said, "Abba, Daddy, does that mean no more boomies? No more rockets, no more sirens, no more missiles, no more running to the bomb shelter." This is the same girl who would put her flippers at a certain angle by the door, because if a bomb was to come at 3:30 in the morning at night, she could get in her flip-flops as fast as possible to make it down to her bomb shelter. "No more boomies," she asked. I said, "No, sweetie, no more boomies. We're going to Australia. This is a long way away." What do you say to an 8-year-old girl? As a father, as a parent, you feel like you failed. Your number one duty, number one, protect your children. When we got to the festival, I was there with my wife and both our daughters, and they'd gone to sit down. The festival, first night of Hanukkah. Who knows what Hanukkah is about? Okay. Well, that's impressive. I wasn't asking you, I know you know. It's a festival of light. You know, it teaches us that light will always prevail. Not that there is no darkness, there is darkness. But that light will prevail. But in order for the light to prevail, we must fight for it. We must fight for it. So when we got there, my wife and daughters went to sit down to begin watching the ceremony, which is about to start, and I went to get some food. And then, bang. My first thought was, must be some balloons. This was a festival. Children, families, face painting, pet animals, rides. I thought it must have been a clown or something, or a balloon. And then bang, 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 non-stop. So I knew straight away, we're under attack. You see people running in every direction, people taking their children, chairs falling, smoke billowing from the grass. And I ducked. There was a picnic area right next to us, I ducked. But my first thought is my wife and kids. That would have been about 20, 30 meters away from me, which meant they would have been even more exposed, in line with the shooter. So I stood up to run towards them and I got hit. It's hard to describe that feeling, but it's like someone opens a faucet and blood just gushes out. I fell to the ground and I began screaming, "I'm hit, I'm hit." No one could help. Everyone is lying down. Bullets are going in every direction. I put my hand on my head. I could feel the flap of my skin. You can still see the scars there today, which thankfully, blessed, our angels at Royal North Shore Hospital fixed up. I call my wife. Can't reach her. I don't know where she is. I don't know where the kids are. Next to me is lying a man who gives me his shirt to put as a tourniquet on my head. On my right is an old man who's lying over his wife. He's shielding her. He's not moving. He's shot, and blood is dripping out. Drip, drip, drip. On the left of me are 2 people who I saw shot in front of my very eyes, including a woman whose body parts were just drawn. It's about 2, 3, 4 minutes now. I'm lying there, blood still gushing. Still haven't heard from my wife. I don't know. So I took a photo. Took a photo of myself. 1, to see how bad I was hit. And 2, to send to her with the words, love you. Not knowing if those were going to be the last 2 words. This is the picture I took. This is what I sent her. It was only maybe 10 minutes after the shooting started, I finally got word that she was okay. That she was safe. Her, and that she took the children in her arms and they ran towards the beach. And they hid there on the sand in a spot where they keep surfboards. The scars, physical scars, they'll heal. Emotional scars will take much longer. The truth is we cannot change what happened. We can change the future. We must change the future. In order to do that, however, we need to also talk about how we got to where we got here today. How did this happen in our Australia? Sunburned country, land of opportunity, freedom. We like to think of Australia, or perhaps we did think of Australia as a tolerant, multicultural, open success story. In many ways it is. But that image has also over the years bred complacency. When we allowed hate to fester unchecked, we told ourselves that anti-Semitism was marginal, it was fringe, it was imported from elsewhere, it was on the extreme far right, it was in the minority. That belief is no longer tangible. It doesn't hold face. Anti-Semitism is not confined to the neo-Nazis or the graffiti in the dead of the night. It is now mainstreamed. And Bondi is the result of years of warnings going unheeded. What did people think would happen when 2 days after October 7th, on October 9th, 2 days later, on Sydney Opera House, we saw a mob, exactly the same mob, and exactly the same people that we saw in Town Hall yesterday, marching towards the Opera House, chanting, gas the Jews, only to be told, no. They said, only where are the Jews? As if that's somehow more tolerable or more acceptable. It is not. What did we think would happen when synagogues were being firebombed, when Jews were being doxxed, when schools were being graffitied, when we had week after week chants to globalize Intifada, marches across the Harbour Bridge, our landmarks being hijacked. And yes, the role of the government as well. We have to ask hard questions about that. What did people think would happen when the government inflamed the conflict, reversing decades of bipartisan support of Israel, singling Israel out for opprobrium, engaging in lawfare campaigns in international courts or giving tacit approval to that, or recognizing a Palestinian state while hostages were still being held in the dungeons of Gaza. What did people think was going to happen? Peace would explode? No. We warned repeatedly that when this hatred is left unchecked, when it is mainstreamed, when it is legitimized or excused, it will lead to violence. And December 14th was the deadly manifestation of those warnings going unheeded. We also need to talk about the elephant in the room. It's one word. It starts with Z, it ends with M, Zionism. Zionism at its simplest is belief in the Jewish people's right to self-determination in their ancestral homeland. You don't have to be a Jew. Hands up here if you believe Jews have the right to self-determination in Israel. Keep your hands up if you think that makes you a racist. Okay. Those who know Jonathan Sacks, former chief rabbi of the UK, he once, in 2016, speaking for the European Parliament, who spoke about anti-Semitism as a mutating virus. He said in the Middle Ages they came for us because of our religion. In the 30s and 40s, they came for us because of our race. Today, they come for us because of our nation state, Israel. But throughout the generations, there has been one constant: the refusal and denial of Jews to live as free and equal human beings. Anti-Semitism is a virus that has mutated. It is not only attacks on Jews as individuals, on synagogues, and on Jews celebrating our religious holiday of Hanukkah, but it is also hatred manifesting itself as anti-Zionism, as if that can ever justify attacks on children, on elderly, on synagogues, on our schools. It cannot, and we need to call that out, and we need to address this.
Very good. About a minute left.
All right, I'll be quick.
There'll be question time.
Oh, fantastic. We'll solve everything in question time. Bondi must be a turning point. We must learn not only what happened, but how it was allowed to happen, and the appropriate lessons to ensure that it does not ever happen again. To that extent, the Royal Commission is absolutely critical, and it's something we called for from the very beginning. We must understand that even though we were targeted as Jews, this was an assault on Australia, on Australian values. This is not a left-wing issue, this is not a right-wing issue, this is an Australian issue. Because when any one minority is singled out, is dehumanized, is attacked, is harassed and vilified, it is as if the entire nation is attacked. So we all have to speak out. The attack in Bondi was not merely a failure of intelligence, it was a very big one. It was a wholesale failure of leadership. And we need to understand that leaders have obligations and power and responsibility to show leadership, to show courage, to show moral clarity. I believe we are seeing that now. We've been seeing that from Premier Chris Minns and increasingly so from Prime Minister Albanese, who I would say, at least in this regard, should be acknowledged for inviting President Herzog. But it is a long road. It is a long road to repairing the relationship with Israel that has been so harmed over the last number of years, as well as with the Jewish community, who has in many ways felt abandoned by this government, our warnings unheeded. And we must call a spade a spade. We cannot shy away from calling anti-Semitism and Jew hatred wherever we see it, whether it is from the far right, whether it is in radical Islamic circles, whether it is, as it has been now, so deeply entrenched within progressive cultural arena, as we've seen at one writers' festival after another. But we must learn from what happened if we don't want to repeat the mistakes of the past. And I think we can.
Thank you. Gemma.
Hello. I was going to try and do this without my glasses because I'm vain, but I can't, so I won't. Thank you for having me. Thanks, Arsen. We've only just met, although you don't know this, I followed you on social media for a long time, so there you go.
Follow more people, we get much less.
That's for those of you not met me, my name's Gemma. I'm a purveyor of opinions. I'm a dispenser of advice, and over the last few years found myself in this really unusual position of being a Christian advocate for the Jewish people. I've always been that by design, but never Arsen's view of like, this is not the Australia he remembers. It's certainly not the Australia I grew up in. I had Jewish friends since I was a kid, and it didn't matter. It's like saying, what flavour ice cream do you have, chocolate or vanilla? Who cares? We're just going to have ice cream. I never thought of it as a thing. In preparing for today, I was trying to work out when I first started writing about this issue, and it was 2019 broadly. And I remember that year because it was the year my father passed away, but I just remember it at the time thinking, oh, that's like a bit of an outlier. I remember first seeing research about the rise in anti-Semitic incidents on university campuses and in schools and things like that, and thinking, oh gosh, that's terrible. But never in my life imagining we'd be in the situation where we are here. So full disclosure, when I got your email, and it's, the headline was, after Bondi, what now? I was like, well, there's a question. Who can answer that question? And I must confess, I spent the last couple of weeks just saying, what am I going to say? What can I say that's new? What can I say that I haven't said verbatim over the last few years? But in an attempt to answer that question, you need to come back with me in time a little bit. Just indulge me for a second. So there are many things that I have said, like I said, verbatim, since October 7, particularly to my Jewish friends and to the broader community on air, in my columns. I've been privileged enough to speak at the Central Shul here, Caulfield Shul in Victoria, St Kilda Shul, many different places. And the three things that I've said most commonly have been, you have more friends than you know, you are not alone, and the overwhelming majority of Australians, it's a tautology, isn't it? The majority of Australians are with you. Now, all of these things are objectively true, but here's the thing. It felt like cold comfort. I would say these things and it was like, well, everyone's trying to kill you, but don't worry. We're all with you. And as I look back, particularly in the wake of Bondi, I see that with even greater clarity. And I see that true words can be objectively true and undeniably true, but carry very little weight. And I found this out in Israel in December 2024, when the war was still very much at play. And I'd been asked to go by Joel Burney as a part of an AIJAC mission. It was a very small mission, and I remember Joel calling me and saying, oh, look, there's this small group going. And for context, I'd been asked to go back 4 or 5 times in 2024, but it didn't ever really land with me. The timing didn't work out. And he said to me, you're going to be away for Christmas. And my mother lives in Perth, and I hadn't been back for Christmas for a couple of years. So I've called my mum and I said to her, look, there's currently a travel ban for Israel, for Australians flying to Israel. But if the ban's lifted, I really feel like I should go, Mum. Sorry, I'll be back for New Year, but I felt like I should go. And bless my mother, she said to me, darling, the safest place you can be is in the will of God. So if you feel like you should go, you should go, which is how I ended up going. I said to Joel, if the travel ban is lifted, I will go. And so I did. And it was everything you could imagine for a privileged person, objectively a privileged white person half Italian person from Australia who'd never been in a conflict zone in her life. And, we got my first experience of bomb shelters, took the right pyjamas. It was a good strategic move. The Houthi, our guide said to us, oh, don't worry, the Houthi never do 2 nights in a row until they did. So that was an interesting experience, genuinely an interesting experience. And as an aside, you see how Israelis live with that every single day and they just get up and get on with it. Can you imagine in Australia if there was a bomb attack and we all spent the night in a bomb shelter? Oh, I can't go to work, I've got trauma. Like they just get up and go to work. The most resilient people I've ever met in my life. We met obviously with families of hostages who were desperate for news and at that stage still proof of life. We met with very senior people who in the background, whose names wouldn't mean anything to anyone except for maybe Gerard and Anne and Arsen, who were desperately trying to achieve diplomatic outcomes and policy-based outcomes. We met with psychologists and doctors at the Sheba Hospital who are dealing with the tsunami of PTSD and mental health issues of the trauma. You've got a nation traumatised from October 7. And yes, it might surprise some of you to know that AIJAC organised meetings for our group with senior officials in the Palestinian Authority, and that these AIJAC tours are, despite what some on the political left would like you to think, they're not a holiday. My God, I came back with bacterial pneumonia. I really did. I was so sick. You do 10, 11-hour days and you get everything. So we couldn't go into the West Bank because of the travel ban. The DFAT liaison for our mission was going in and out in an armoured car. So we did those meetings via Zoom. And of course, the visit to what I call the killing fields, which was 2 of the kibbutzim, Kvaza and Niroz, and going to the site of the Nova massacre. And you can say, I can stand here and go, oh, I'll never be the same. I will never be the same. You can't be the same. And I've written about this, and I have a view that Penny Wong and the Prime Minister for whatever ground they've been trying to make up, they've never been to those sites. And I believe that that's deliberate. And my view and my theory is because you cannot stand there and meet with those people and see what was done, the evil that was perpetrated, and not change your policy. It's impossible. It's easy to be in denial if you don't have to face up to it. I felt an incredible weight of responsibility to carry that experience back to Australia, the emotional impact of hearing firsthand from survivors and responders, being a custodian of sorts of that story. And the story of bearing witness is such truth in bearing witness. Going to the Nova site where our guide, so that you know a lot of survivors, part of their therapy is to be guides to visitors of those sites to talk about their experience. And my new friend, Shalev Biton, he's a musician, he's in his early 20s. His life was saved, and that of about 7 or 8 of his mates was saved by a fellow by the name of Yunus Al-Kanawi. I had to write that phonetically because I wouldn't pronounce it otherwise. He's an Israeli Bedouin Muslim who risked his own life by lying to Hamas when they turned up on motorbikes at his farm, the farm he was the manager of, saying, "Where are the Jewish kids?" And as he tells the story, Shalev is underneath the house with 6 or 7 of his mates, and they hear Yunus saying, "You can't kill me, I'm a Muslim. You can't kill me, I'm a Muslim. There are no Jews here." The story is very famously reported in Israel. I recommend you go read it because it's extraordinary. It's the best of humanity. And look, I will make this observation: as an apartheid state, Israel really is a failure when you hear stories like this. There was so much on that trip, but in the context of today, in the context of the question of what now, it was actually a short interaction later in the week, an innocuous, speedy shopping trip that offers an insight for me anyway to share to you today about the pathway forward. And we didn't compare notes, but it's actually very much aligned to what Arsen shared. So we had a last minute audience with President Herzog. And I was saying to Arsen, my first trip, I thought I took a lot of work clothes, and Israelis are quite relaxed. So this time I packed nothing but sort of winter wear, and I knew we'd be going to the country. So I've raced up to the mall to the nearest shop. I need to get something that I can wear to visit a president. So I'm in the shop. I bought this skirt, and the lady says to me, "Where are you from? Where is that accent?" And I say, "I'm Australian." And her face falls. And she looks at me and she goes, "What did we ever do to you?" And I felt the weight of that comment because it was a fair question. Like, what did we ever do to you? And I found myself wheeling out "it's not everyone, most Australians are with you." And it felt so empty. It's true, but the words carried no weight, certainly not for her. It was the best I had in the moment, but it was so far short of the mark, not even close. So after Bondi, now what? The answers aren't easy and they're not quick, and I have some suggestions that I humbly offer to everyone in the room and everyone watching and listening via this broadcast. And I would like to draw on some words I wrote 6 months before that trip. It was the 8th of June 2024, which was, ironically, would have been my late father's 79th birthday. So there you go. But looking back, some of these words feel a little bit prophetic. I'm talking about the silence in corporate Australia at the time. I remember feeling like, where is everyone? Why am I standing on... And I'm no hero, don't get me wrong, I'm just a loudmouth, right? And I was raised to know values and to stand up for them. But I felt like I'm looking around and, corporate Australia has a view on The Voice, which it should do, has a view on all these other things, which it should do. But on this issue, it felt like they were missing in action. And for those who are, like, I write one column once a week for The Australian. My main job is in corporate life. And I wrote these words: "The inconvenient truth is simple. It is easy to take a principled position when most of the world agrees with you. Nobody can argue against advocating for equality, for the end to gendered violence, or for closing the gap, and nobody should argue against these things. But you are not going to find anyone violently opposing these views and causes, and you certainly won't face violent, and extreme tactics of intimidation, the kind that we see from the anti-Israel / pro-Palestinian movement in this country. You know the ones I'm talking about, the ones who mask their faces and the ones that Arsen referenced. We've seen them all over the news over the last 24 hours. So that was before Bondi. Bondi woke up corporate Australia and most of the rest of Australia. The silent majority. All it took was blood on the sand. All it took was 15 dead Australians, a Jewish child at a Hanukkah party, Holocaust survivors, the elderly, dead Jews hunted like game on Bondi Beach on a Sunday afternoon. And if those words offend you, good, because they should be offensive. I'm offended by what's happened to this country. I'm offended by the soft underbelly of weakness. I'm offended by the polite anti-Semitism of the academic sections of this community. I am offended by all of it. What a terrible, unthinkable price to pay for broader Australia to wake up and find its voice. So as for the what now and the what next, the answer is really simple, and I'd like to thank my friend Peter Ivany for the penny dropping over lunch on Friday when I was saying to him, I don't know what I'm going to talk about on Monday. The answer is simple. The silent majority must become the vocal majority. It must become the forthright majority, the fearless and informed majority, the morally clear, tenacious majority. We can no longer let conversations go unchallenged. We can no longer allow the words of polite anti-Semitism infect workplaces and social situations. What do I mean by that? Let me give you a couple of examples. A person implying ever so gently that October 7 is somehow justified in the context of historical geopolitical activities. That's Jew hatred. The genteel suggestion that Jews influence things in the dark behind closed doors, normalising phrases like Jewish influence or the Jewish lobby when used in a derogatory sense. I mean, people talk about the union lobby as if it was some sort of anointed saviour from on high. Accepting, as Arsen said, that Jewish kids need to go to school behind several layers of security and under armed guard. I have never once been to church on a Sunday or on Easter or on Good Friday or on Christmas and been worried that I might not come out alive. Not once in my 52.5 years. It is unacceptable that Jewish Australians live like that. We should not accept, and vocally and aggressively not accept, that Jewish Australians should be living in fear simply because of their Jewish identity and ethnicity. We should not accept any culture or ideology that seeks to impose and normalise foreign conflicts or hatreds into Australian society, which is a historically accepting, tolerant and pluralistic egalitarian society. My father came to this country on a boat in 1956 after the war. He hadn't seen my grandfather for 2 years because my grandfather didn't have enough money to bring the whole family out together. So he came first, worked his way up, earned enough money, sent the tickets. My story is not atypical. My story is familiar to hundreds of thousands of migrant Australians who love this country, are grateful to be here and helped build it. So it's up to every one of us. It's a daily practice, and I get it. I get that it's scary, and I get that it comes with a price. Actually, fun fact, again, in researching for this afternoon, I was Googling this thing I was looking for that I couldn't find, but what I did find, so I feature on quite a lot of anti-Israel websites. Who knew? Thank you. I didn't know. And the good thing about it is I think I've evolved because it didn't frighten me. It would have frightened me a year ago, but it doesn't frighten me today as I stand here. I didn't love it, but I think, as I said, my parents raised my brother and I think, reasonably well in respect of knowing what's right and wrong and being able to count the cost of those things. So I wish I had a simple solution for you, but I don't. I wish I had one that didn't cost anything, but I don't. Anything worth having comes at a cost. And I know that this is something that each one of us can carry in our social interactions, in our workplace interactions, and it might feel like small things, but small things can currently over time become big things. Find your voice and use it. And if I may leave you with one line from that same column from 2024, the place I keep coming back to when I look at all of this with a clear mind is simple. It's time to speak up when it counts, not just when it suits. Thank you, Gerard.
Two great talks. Thanks to both our speakers. So I've got a Zoom call here from one of our Zoomers in Canberra, which goes to the topics that both of you touched on. What can any government do, that is federal or state government, do to stop or diminish anti-Semitism especially aimed at students in schools and in liberal arts degrees. I guess you could set that beyond liberal arts degrees. So in universities, what can any government realistically do?
No, I'll be quick here.
You can do them both.
Just come up near the
Oh,
camera.
of course, sorry.
Okay.
Arnon.
A couple of things. First of all, we need to recognise that the college arena, the university campus arena, has become a bastion of unadulterated Jew hatred, anti-Western hatred, and in many respects anti-Australian hatred as well. And these are the students today who become the leaders of tomorrow, become policymakers, politicians, and so on. But it doesn't need to be left unchecked. Universities receive federal funding. Many of them do anyway. In America, for example, you have federal legislation which mandates that if your university receives any kind of federal funding, whatever the level is, and you do not take adequate action to stamp out anti-Semitism on campus, your funding will become jeopardized. Simple as that. And that has been exercised in the US.
Very simple, a furious agreement there, but let's take Zionist, Jew, Israeli, whatever, out of the context and imagine that the university campuses are protesting anyone else, any other cohort, it would immediately be shut down. So let's apply the existing laws and regulations as if they mean something and absolutely cut the money off at the tap. They're bloated anyway, they won't miss it.
Thank you for excellent presentations. Arsen, I want to ask a personal question. There's a long history of denial, whether it's Holocaust denial, rape denial after October 7. You faced denial a couple of days later when your photograph was told it's faked. How did you personally feel?
Yeah, it's outrageous.
So I'll share a little secret with you. I got those images or the stories that this was fake. Those AI generated images of supposedly someone putting makeup on me. My first thing is, how many fingers does this person have? That's the first thing I do. It obviously wasn't me. The allegation was that I was a crisis actor, that this was paint, and this was all a production. I got these images as I was literally being wheeled into the operating theatre to remove bullet shrapnel from my head.
Wow.
You ask how I feel. On the one hand, I didn't want to dignify this sick campaign of hate and lies, but the reality is what happens online manifests in real life as well.
It's very true.
Whether it's fake news, whether it's denial, whether it's this kind of hatred, it incites violence, it radicalizes people, it puts targets on us, and there is an onus on social media and digital companies to put a stop to this.
Arsen, you spoke about dropping your children off to school and the gauntlet that they have to run each time. I think it's important that the people here and people watching at home understand that this is not something that has happened since October 2023, but has applied for 30 years or more and is done on the advice not of the paranoia of your community, but on the advice of our police forces. And I think it's important that everybody understands that the security requirements that these apply, not just now, but for decades.
You're right, they have been in existence.
Very quick response. Yep.
You're right, they've been in existence for a long time. Quite frankly, we do not, as a community, want to be living in closed ghettos.
No,
This is an
it's the
open,
answer.
democratic, liberal society. We cannot live in ghettos like this. The reality is, over the years, and especially since October 7th, and certainly since December 14th, we have no choice because there are legitimate, serious security threats against our communities.
There's a question here. Oh, there. Okay, sorry.
I'd just like your comment. I understand the gunman had an ISIS flag in their car. Most of the victims were Jewish. And there you have the head of the Australian Federal Police coming out and saying religion had nothing to do with it. Am I missing something, or is there some underlying issue here?
Why don't Gemma, a quick response from Gemma.
Look, I think whatever was said that night in the very early stages, and I watched 10 hours of news while you were being stitched up, I think that's water under the bridge. And I don't say that to diminish it. It's just having previously been a journalist and you cover these things, those first 24 hours, there's a lot of stuff going around. And she was a new commissioner. I don't know. I don't think I personally wouldn't be stuck on that. I would be looking at what they're now doing and what they have since said and since acknowledged.
Okay, so here, Graham, and then we'll go to the corner there. No, hang on, do Graham first, and then we'll go to the corner. Yeah, okay. And,
thank you, Arsen. Given that most of the anti-Semitism truly is from the left, the academia, rather than far right, and I don't share your optimism about Signor Albanese, isn't the elephant in the room not the Z word, but the I word?
I think the jungle is big enough for both words.
So by the I word, you're talking about radicalism.
For a quick response.
Okay.
Well, I mean, just on that, if I may, the Australian today published a story from the new incoming head of ASIO, who's confirmed that the single biggest threat to Australia is radical Islam. That is published in today's edition of the Australian. I don't know that it's an elephant in the room anymore.
If you can't call a spade, we can't defeat this. Simple as that.
Hi, thank you very much. I read your columns every week.
Thank you. Someone has to. Thank you.
The genocide word is everywhere. It's ingrained, it's entrenched, and there doesn't seem to be a big kind of anything to... It comes from the UN as well as everywhere in Australia, and yet I'm not aware of any real efforts to try to get rid of that word or present the lie that it is.
Look, I find myself in all manner of conversations. Some I volunteer for and some I don't. But my approach to that, because I agree with you, is to simply say there was no genocide in Gaza, it was a war. And people get very cranky and I say, please give me the example, give me the point of reference, and they can't because they typically are uninformed and it's an ideological view versus a fact-based view. And this sort of speaks to my charge to you, to us, is this is that one step at a time. Be educated. It's like people who say to Zionism, for example, oh no, Israel colonisers. Like Google the Tel Dan stone, T-E-L, capital D-A-N, 600 years BC. It's a stone in which, in Aramaic, it is written evidence of the house of David, and it was found in Israel. It is, take the problem up with carbon dating. It's not my opinion, it's not your opinion. The Jewish people are indigenous to that area of the world. This is just a fact. So we need to be armed with information to have these conversations. You can't just don't take a knife to a gunfight, pardon the analogy.
No, never. I would just say, yes, there was a genocide. The only genocide, however, was what Hamas attempted to do to us on October 7th. That was the genocide. You are strict,
He
Gerard.
runs a good shop. I like it. It's good.
Okay, this isn't a question, it's a statement. If that's all right? Yeah. As reaching my 8th decade, and you talk about becoming mainstream, I find myself as a Jew becoming more introverted now than I've ever been.
Right.
I was always out there. Now when I go to guide at the Jewish Museum, I hide my label which says Sydney Jewish Museum.
I'm so sorry that you have to
unconsciously I take it off.
Yeah.
And
do you know, and so I'm wearing a Magen David. It was a gift from Rabbi Solomon in Western Australia, and I'm wearing a cross. And I like to confuse people so they don't know which side I'm on. It's really funny, actually. But I felt like I'd go to Melbourne a lot for work, and I went down to Melbourne last year, and I remember feeling unsafe. Well, I'm not Jewish. I don't know if there's anyone in Melbourne who reads me. Probably not, but
I read you.
Thank you.
Online.
But I understand the concept of what you're talking about, because when I decided I would wear my Magen David in Melbourne, I felt like, oh, that feels a bit risky, sort of thing. So all I can say is I'm so sorry that you feel that way, and I hope that maybe that dissipates for you.
Gerard, can you indulge me in 1 minute response? First of all, I I feel your pain. You are far from the first person to have said that. And it doesn't matter what age one is. I've seen students on campus say the exact same thing. There are some who have multiple social media accounts, one for their Jewish friends and family and one for everyone else. There is that fear, but you know what else? Our enemies, that's what they want. They want us to crawl. They want us to hide. They want us to cower. They want us to stay silent. We cannot indulge them in that. So the answer to this hatred, for me anyway, is to be even prouder Jew, even prouder Zionist, and unapologetic. I understand now that there is concern for so many people when we see what we see on the street, and I talk from personal experience, but there is no easy answer.
Thank you both for your talks. The reason we're where we're at, I see, is lack of leadership. I think from day one, we were here on the night that October 9th or whatever, when they marched down to the Opera House, and it disturbed me. It was like watching a foreign group of people sort of taking over the streets. But what since Bondi seems to have happened is that the lack of leadership from the top, which is Prime Minister, Foreign Affairs Minister, it seems to have swung. And the fact that it swung with the fact that these people are very political is that they're picking up that the majority doesn't like this anti-Semitism. Yeah. So do you want to comment on that? And this is maybe what is after Bondi, that we're going to move back. Maybe not get rid of anti-Semitism as it was, but maybe we are on the way to finding that we don't like it and the leaders of the country will move.
Let me be really uncouth, if I may. It wasn't, and you can tell me whether you think I'm wrong in my assessment.
I've never done that once yet.
So if 15 dead Australians, if 15 dead Jews had been shot dead in a shul, in a synagogue, most Australians would have gone, oh, that's terrible. But latent thought would have been, well, it's a synagogue. It happened on Bondi. So it was, as you said, it was an attack on all of Australia, but it brought it home. I live on the north side, God's own country, so I was a long way from it, but I watched it, and the first thing was messaging. Are you there? Are you safe? Are the children safe? That sort of thing. I think it brought it so real to so many people, and like I said before, what a terrible price to pay. And I will make this observation, like even initially, I think the Prime Minister was like a rabbit in the headlights. It was like he didn't know what to do, how to behave, and didn't know what to do with justifiable anger. You talk about the warnings that were ignored. I wrote a column. I read the first ASIO report like 18 months ago, and I was like, holy shit. Like this is terrible. So I wrote a column about it, and everyone's like, oh, that'll never happen. And it happened at Bondi. And yet we have the ASIO head today saying the same thing. And my question is the government going to pay attention and take appropriate action? One would hope that this has woken them up. It has definitely woken up the majority of Australians. But the terrible truth is that if it had not have happened in a public place, in a famous Australian iconic place, I do not think we'd be where we are.
The only thing I'll disagree with you on as someone from the eastern suburbs is that the north is God's country. Otherwise, every other word from your ears to God's mouth, or other way around. I keep forgetting. We can all choose what we want to take out of what happened in Bondi. For me personally, it's not the heinous evil and barbarism of the two terrorists, but it's the way that everyday ordinary Australians showed extraordinary courage.
Yes, agreed.
From lifesavers running towards the shooting, from nurses from across the street running towards the site and giving IV. I know that firsthand because they came to my aid. From politicians, including journalists, came to help me, not to interview me. Politicians, including Kelly Sloan, who came there while the shooting was still going on, to offer help and stay with me and comfort me until first aid came. It is the way we have seen groups of lawyers, groups of business leaders, groups of sports leaders, groups of security officials come together saying we need a royal commission, we need answers, we need leadership now. I think finally though tragically, in the wake of what happened on December 14, Australia has woken up.
Just a final question. We'll start with you and then go to Gemma. Sorry, what's that? Okay. We're talking about. I've just got to cut there. I didn't know you had your hand up. We're talking about changes of views, but however much the views change, radical Islam is with us forever, you would think. The radical left has been with us for a long time. It'll be with us forever. The neo-Nazis are off on the fringe, but radical movements are here, and how are they going to be handled? So we'll start with...
Oh, that's an easy one. Look, we live in a country that has as one of our guiding principles here freedom of speech and robust debate, and it's a wonderful thing and it's a necessary thing, but I also believe that it doesn't come without any conditions at all, and we have to recognize when speech crosses into incitement and leads to violence as it has. We have seen adoption of legislation, albeit a very robust debate about prescribing hate groups, and I think that's absolutely necessary, and that does really aim specifically at the hate preachers, the radical Islamic mosques, which masquerade as educational institutions. It is a fine line, but we need to understand that free speech doesn't come without responsibilities as well.
It's freedom of speech, not freedom of consequences. I can defame you. I would never, but I could.
You want to be the first today.
But there are consequences to that, and you are just as free to exercise your right to remedy that situation. I would say it comes down to one thing. Politicians are opportunistic and they're about political survival. So as long as they can connect their demise and the dissatisfaction of the Australian people to the rise of radical Islam and radical forces, they will start paying attention to it pretty quickly. They're survivors. It's what's in it for them. They know, Albanese knows that Australia blames him. The polls showed it. People are not shy about it. I think it's a survival instinct. I'd like to say that it would come from a place of conviction, but I'm not that naive.
So many thanks.
You're welcome.
So it's been great here today to have a Jewish gentleman and a Christian female talking about this very important issue. We've learned a lot tonight. We've got great experiences tonight. And I'd just like to say thanks to both our speakers and well done.